Welcome to Pagan Coffee Talk. Here are your hosts, Oswan and Lord Night.
All right, so today's topic is Revelations, and not the book in the Bible. This is more like when the light bulb goes off.
Oh, I love it when the light bulb goes off.
When you're sitting there and you got students in your class, or you're sitting there talking to somebody, and all of a sudden you see that look in their eyes, and oh, there's that light bulb. There's that light bulb moment. They finally got what you were saying.
Or how about the opposite of that? How about when somebody's sitting there talking about something and says some random thing, which sends you down this thought pattern. You're like, oh, crap. That means, oh, either I'm having a breakdown or a breakthrough, and what's the difference?
Oh, yeah, it could work both ways for sure.
It can work both ways. There's been many times I've sat there and was doing classes and stuff and heard somebody say something in passing and literally be sitting there thinking about something completely different for a minute, and everybody in class kind of like looking at me going, did we break them?
Right. Meanwhile, you're branching off into like 10 different directions with this one thought pattern, right?
One thought because somebody made some smart ass comment. Like, oh, here, let me think about that.
Right. 10 minutes later.
10 minutes later. Are you sure we didn't break him? He ain't been moving.
Yeah, 10 minutes later, and you're like, oh, sorry.
Oh,
I just had a thought. I had a moment.
I had a moment. Please excuse me while I go run my mouth into a recorder right quick.
Right?
Well, see, and to make it even worse is sometimes these revelations they're wrapped up in those universal mysteries. So it's not like we can turn around and start going blah, 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 A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Because then their light bulb is going to go out, not pop on or pop off, however you want to say it. It's going to go out, and you're going to get that deer in the headlight look.
Like, yeah. You'll be sitting there talking about something, and yes, you will see your students start to be like, oh, wait a minute, what? It's like getting at the end of most of my, a certain set of my classes and finally looking at somebody going, okay, so your problems are caused by you, and I can't fix them.
But now, I'm just curious.
See, I get that dead silence now.
Yeah, pretty much. But
in class, you know how many people will look at me going, "You son of a bitch."
Right. But I'm just curious, what causes that to happen? Can we even say what causes that to happen?
I've always called them leaps in logic. It's something humanity can do, but I don't think computers will ever be able to do. For some reason, humanity seems to have this ability to put chocolate and peanut butter together and get something new.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There comes a time when we create or suddenly think of concepts and stuff, and this is created by things that might not necessarily have anything to do with one another. But this new idea you have wraps these two ideas that seem to be opposite of one another into one another and make them actually function off of one another. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so essentially it's an act of creation.
Exactly. I don't know what else to call it, but there's like this mystical thing that seems to happen. You suddenly have this knowledge of something, and it just happened to be triggered by this word or that word or by this situation going on.
All right, that makes sense.
I have seen a lot of people take classes and listen to what in the world I say, go, yeah, I believe you, blah, 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 and walk out the door.
Right.
6 months later,
the time.
Happens all the time, yeah, whatever, yeah. You know what I'm talking about, that normal, yeah, okay, sure, if you say so.
Right.
And then these same people will come back 6 months later going, oh, hold on, let me tell you what in the world's been going on. And suddenly this part of my training I put in, and I noticed myself doing this and that and this and that, and started to see where in the world you kept on saying all this stuff works.
Right. And it's essentially they've put it all together.
They put it all together as that divine revelation. Because there's things that we learn and we hear, and until we are in certain situations, we're never going to understand them completely. So it becomes that revelation moment where people are sitting there, God smacked, going, what the fuck just happened?
Right.
And I know it sounds a little, niched and all this other stuff, but the idea there is that these thoughts also come from somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So basically you're saying that it is like when you're saying divine revelation, it's not a thought that through some leap of logic, like you were talking about earlier, we have come to this conclusion. It's just all of a sudden we come to this conclusion. It's come out of nowhere seemingly.
Right. I mean, just like recognizing the theory that the stronger will always prevails in situations, right?
Right.
And the fact is I can sit here and tell you this happens all the time. Right? Now you listen to this, and then you go to work and you start seeing it actually happen. Your revelation there is, oh, wait a minute. I'm starting to see what he's talking about. I'm starting to see what in the world he's saying.
Right. That's more like a progression of events.
Yes.
All right. So we have several different types of revelations that we've just here in the first less than 10 minutes. We've got a divine revelation.
Yeah, we got a divine revelations where it's a thought that comes out of nowhere.
There's a leap of logic.
Jake, where we're putting two things that seemingly have nothing to do with each other, putting them together and going, here's how in the world this would operate like this. And it work.
And then there's the progression of events.
Right. Where you've learned something and you think you understand the concept of it until you start to experience it.
Are there any other ways that you can think of that these revelations happen?
I don't think so. I mean, because even when we're looking at like people going through grief or traumatic experiences, there are tons of revelations I've seen these people suddenly have about themselves and about the world around them. And sometimes these revelations where you've got these people that have experienced this, and then they sit down and talk to you, and because you explain it in a certain way, this situation takes on a different meaning.
So you think it's possible that for one person to have in any one of these types of revelations and then come back and talk to somebody else and then have another revelation about their revelation?
Yes. Because I'll see people, how many times have you seen me do this where somebody goes and does something and me look at them going, then why can't you do this? You just did this and this is how.
Yeah.
And that there's really no difference between these two situations. And the person sit there going, oh, crap, you're right.
So this would be one of those moments where you're having a conversation and you'll be like, you know what? I never thought about it that way.
Exactly.
It's something that you already know, but now you have a new way of looking at it.
You have a better appreciation of it.
Okay.
Or should I say, or you have a better understanding of this. These moments define us. These are defining moments in our lives. These help define our personality, our way of thinking and viewing the world. I mean, and these revelations like this can happen all the way up to old age.
So it could be at any time during your life. I mean,
yeah,
even babies have revelations. You can see it when something clicks in their eyes.
Well, yeah, or when things don't go the way they think it does. There was an experiment I watched where they took babies and they set up this little scene and they put it in front of them like a little puppet house. In which somebody puts their hand in there and they push a block off a table. And the kids didn't react. They were like, okay, sure, whatever. But because it made it look like the block's floating in air.
Okay.
Until one of the researchers accidentally did the following. They pushed it off with their finger. The baby could see the hand, and that's it. But after they got it off the table, they withdrew their fingers, and the baby was like, oh, wait a minute. Because in their logic, as long as somebody was touching it, it could float.
Mm.
It didn't matter if you didn't have your hand around it or not. Baby's understanding of this was, as long as somebody's touching it, it can float in midair. When you're not touching it, oh, wait a minute. So again, think of that revelation to that child. This is now part of their core being as a kid.
Right. It's become a belief.
It's become a belief. I mean, yes, that belief will change as they get older, realizing, okay, no, you actually got to be gripping it.
Right.
You can't just hold it up with the palm of your hand or whatever.
Right. They'll come to see what reality actually is as far as that goes.
Yes. When we do our meditations and stuff like that, there's a point in your meditations if you're doing them daily and you're going through your shit cup.
Right.
And going through your issues to where in the world you're finally not going to have too many issues to go through. And then you can finally start to learn that phrase that came from The Matrix, where the little boy's sitting there going, oh, don't try to bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, realize you're bending yourself.
Right. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. You're not actually...
Well,
you're changing yourself is what you're doing.
Yeah, because when I'm watching this movie and I'm seeing this, I'm like, oh, duh. I mean, this is something we've known, but other people still have problems with this concept.
Right. They're still trying to quote unquote bend the spoon.
Bend the spoon. Not realizing what they have to do is bend themselves. Does any of this make sense?
Yeah. I mean, going with the whole spoon thing, the spoon is just a focal point. It's a representation of you.
Right.
And that's what you have to realize.
Exactly.
It's not an actual spoon made of metal.
Well, no. And again, we're back to that. The thought there is the emotion. If you're going to do a love spell, you want to create as much love energy as you can. Just like in gasoline. You know, the higher the number, the better the fuel efficiency and all this other stuff. Same thing with magic. The purer that emotion is for what you need it to be for the spell, the better the spell is.
Right. You basically have to refine that energy and...
Right. And you can't do that if your mind's cluttered or you can't meditate. That's like that. We ran across a woman that sat there and was just like, well, I can't meditate. My answer to her was, you can't meditate because you say you can't meditate. There's the first problem.
Right. You've led yourself to believe that's the case, and
that's the case, and how
you've made it a reality.
Right. And we believe this in craft, even in Wicca, they believe this, but yet you're sitting there saying that. That makes no sense to me. You don't see what you're doing to yourself. You know, this to me is not a revelation, but me saying this now might be a revelation to somebody else going, I think I see what he's saying. If I sit there and say, I'm sorry, our whole religion is based off the same concept of, I think I can.
Right. And, you know, there's long been this idea that you can speak things into existence.
Well, hence the reason we have to keep our word, because to speak into existence requires truth. It has to actually happen.
Right.
So,
and I'm just saying it's that whole power of the spoken word.
Well, my point there is here we're looking at different concepts that have nothing to do with each other, but do.
Right.
We're looking at how to keep your word. How in the world to realize that you are putting psychological roadblocks, barriers in your own way. And it's not my fault. It's nobody else's fault. It's your fault.
Absolutely.
To me, and I don't mean this bad, because to me, if you're an alcoholic and you're going to AA and you've been sober for 10 years, this is the person I want to follow.
Right.
Because they have the strength of will and character to look at something and go, no, this is bad for me. I can't do this. There are no barriers in my way to live the life I want, and me drinking is a barrier.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
AA teaches people how to be strong of will. It really does. But I'm sorry, if you got this person going around, if you have that alcoholic going around going, well, AA's for quitters, he's never going to go to AA.
Well, you know what? Yeah, it is. But in this case, it's not anything. It's not something bad.
Right. But do you see what I'm saying? The revelation there is that you're causing your own problems.
Right.
There are times in our life when we have to look at people going, yes, I do need help. I do need advice. But again, people also got to realize there's a lot of shit we do to ourselves in this.
Maybe that's another topic we can cover at some point, is like the power of destruction.
Right. I mean, again, it's kind of like us trying to explain spirituality and religion. Everybody I know or listen to out there all seem to think that these are opposing forces of one another, when they're not. They're complementary. They balance each other out. Too much spirituality is just as bad as too much religion.
Right.
The revelation there is that both of them have to work in unison with one another.
Right. And that's something it's hard for a lot of people to come to grips with, but once you start looking at it and you start seeing.
Well, when you're sitting down and you're being honest with yourself.
Right.
When you're being 100% truthful with yourself, this is what I believe, and this is why I believe it. I mean, there's a reason I sit there and say it takes a witch to make a witch, because I believe it. I've experienced it. I know what this is like.
Right.
I know what it's like to be that Wiccan and do the self-initiation, Scott Cunningham bullshit. It don't work. I mean, this is not a revelation. This is another type of revelation, because by virtue of my experiencing it, something was revealed to me.
Right, because that's a lot of what we do as humans, is we experience things.
Right. And I'm sorry, if you're sitting there reading books and you ain't experienced jack shit, you don't know nothing.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week for another episode. Pagan Coffee Talk is brought to you by Life Temple and Seminary. Please visit us at lifetempleseminary.org for more information, as well as links to our social media: Facebook, Discord, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit.
We travel down this trodden path, a maze of stone and mire. Just hold my hand as we pass by a sea of blazing pyres. And so it is the end of our days, so walk with me till morning breaks. And so it is the end of our days, so walk with me till morning